Becoming a sniper was my long-cherished dream. Since childhood.
Good morning. The video we're going to be covering today is from a YouTube channel called Voices of the Past. The reaction has been requested by one of the HR Impact DAO decentralized autonomous organization members, Coke, who's a HR subscriber as well. He's requested reaction to this video, and he's also put in a bunch of questions at different time points throughout the video. So the video is called Soviet Sniper Describes Hunting Enemy on the Eastern Front 1941, Memoir of Yevgeny Nikolaev. So let's get into this.
In fact, and even now I can recall in minute detail scenes from the pre-war film Sniper. It was about the feats of a super-accurate Russian marksman in the First World War. In particular, I vividly remember the scenes from the film dealing with the art of camouflage. By making a replica of a tree stump or a dead horse and planting it in no man's land, a sniper could then climb into it and hit the enemy accurately from there. I want, through my narrative, to open up one more page in the history of the Great War for the Fatherland. To describe how the snipers movement was born and grew to mass proportions in Leningrad and played a huge role in the positional trench warfare around the besieged city. Our academy commenced regular classes from morning till night.
Okay, let's pause it at the first question from Coke. What are we at? The 44-second mark. Coke's asking, how important were snipers when fighting the Taliban? So for people who aren't aware, I served with Parachute Regiment as a sniper for a number of years and deployed in various operational theatres, which included Afghanistan multiple times. I went 3 times, 2006, 2008, 2010, into 2011. So how important were snipers when fighting the Taliban? Snipers are important when fighting anyone. Well, that's the reason the capability exists, and why mostly all militaries around the world invest time, effort, and money into training, recruiting, training, and deploying snipers. A multitude of reasons. So if we look at Taliban as the enemy, if you look at Afghanistan as the operation theatre and at Afghanistan campaigns, that was counterinsurgency operations. And one example to answer the question here, collateral damage is always a real concern, and one of the things that especially the British forces try and minimise, and most military, if you've got any sense about them, will want to minimise or eliminate completely is collateral damage. That is people or infrastructure, materials, whatever, buildings, whatever, getting unnecessarily damaged, destroyed, killed. Especially in counterinsurgency operations, it's not good to do these things. One's morally not a great idea, and two, it really can impact the relationship with the local population. So in Afghanistan, for example, it wasn't an invasion that we were on. We were there at the invite of the Afghani government to help them in different scenarios, different areas. Taliban being one, to try and stabilize the region and allow some development improvement to go on. So if you start aligning the local population, that basically makes them more likely to be sympathetic to the enemy which you're fighting, in which case is the Taliban. Why am I saying this? Because one of the things that snipers are really good at is being able to eliminate the risk of collateral damage when you're striking targets. So snipers are high precision, have a high precision capability in terms of strike, obviously. The classic saying is one shot, one kill is not always the case, but we can take a shot onto a specific target with very little with next to no worry about if we're going to injure or hurt anyone around. Now, coming back a step from that, one of the reasons that collateral damage can happen in the first place, or does happen in the first place, can be because it's difficult to identify a target or incorrectly identify a target, and then maybe you're killing the wrong person. Does happen. I mean, on a higher level, I'm not talking about snipers, but snipers have the capability, much better surveillance capability, target acquisition capability, to be able to, one, identify targets in and around civilians. So in counterinsurgency operations, the enemy very rarely wear uniform. I say rarely because I've seen Taliban uniform. Although it's most likely that I saw it once. Most likely that individual Taliban fighter was actually a police officer fighting for the Taliban, or he decided to get hold of a police uniform, maybe it was his own, and wear that when he's engaging us, which probably struck him as a great idea, but wasn't really. Kind of didn't say great things about the Afghan police in that situation when we saw them. But there's one example: minimizing collateral damage. Snipers incredibly capable, and also the surveillance and target acquisition capabilities. We have better optics, we're better trained, and we are much better at working out in a scenario where the enemy is not uniformed. We are much better at working out, compared to the average soldier, at working out who is actually a threat and who isn't. It's not always about who's carrying a weapon. The weapon's up and hidden. So, okay, let's get rolling again.
The cadets strove to acquire as quickly as possible all the tricks of the sniper's art, which Lieutenant Baturin willingly shared with us. And so we set off to take the examination. It was a gloomy October morning. The trenches had long been permeated with damp, and the cold at night had become more noticeable. The first significant amount of snow had fallen the previous day, straight onto the dry, frozen ground like a blanket covering the crippled earth of Leningrad. We all realized that our first wartime winter would be very severe. My partner was Ivan Dobrik, a sturdy lad of short stature with a broad, good-natured face, but a perpetual sly expression on it. He was an excellent marksman on the smallest targets and a downright outstanding serviceman.
What was it there? The 1 minute 32 mark. Okay, so that sort of covered the sniper training there, right? And the academy you mentioned. Coax asked you how hard was my sniper training. Very, very challenging in terms of onboarding, taking on lots of new knowledge. I think for me the hardest part about sniper training was the shooting aspect. And I say that because I found everything else, the knowledge side. I found that very easy to onboard, very easy to onboard, understand and apply. Everything from sniper field craft skills to the technical side, the mathematical side of working out shots, elevated shots, distance shots, windage, all of the stuff that comes with the art of being a sniper. The reason I say the shooting side was hard because in order to improve the shooting element, to get to the stage where your shooting is on the level it needs to be a sniper, which is well above marksman for British snipers anyway. It's not simply a case of following the process, following what you're taught about the different things you do in preparation for a shot and then taking the shot. A lot of it is you can get all that right, but if your body isn't used to being in those positions, being in those situations, physical situations, physical positions, like your muscles aren't used to it, your body's not used to it, your mind isn't used to it because it can be uncomfortable sometimes, then the shot isn't going to go as accurate as you want. You're not going to have the consistency. You're not going to be consistently shooting the accuracy you want. Every so often, you're going to be missing, or you're going to be not as accurate as you should be. Maybe hitting the target, but it's not as accurate as it should be. A lot of that is down to muscle memory. A lot of that is down to conditioning the mind. It can be very solemn on training range. It can be very solemn in a real life scenario, and it can be very solemn in an exercise scenario as a sniper, where it takes a huge amount of patience to be able to move to where you want to move, select the site. Even before that, the map reconnaissance, doing your photographic reconnaissance, if you get any ground photos, taking your time, selecting where you're going to lay up, where you're going to take the shot from. and then actually getting in and being patient with the shot. It is not a quick process. And if you try and rush it, sort of pear-shaped, probably the easiest aspect of sniping I found after I was qualified and after I'd got some experience in it was the shooting side. It's the easiest bit. Everything else, like probably 75% of being a sniper is nothing to do with shooting. It's everything that brings you to the point of pulling the trigger. And if you get any of those bits wrong before you get to the point of pulling the trigger, you don't get to pull the trigger. Either the target's gone, or you're spotted, or you don't even you're spotted, you're killed. Shooting's the easy bit. It's the last bit. And then extracting the difficult bit. But getting in and extracting, these are all the things that aren't anything to do with shooting. So 25% shooting, over 75%, all of the other sniper skills. Let's get going again.
Our rifles, we could see far into the depths of their defences, and German soldiers, large as life, both groups and individuals, occasionally wandering here and there, unfortunately beyond the range of our bullets. We lay like that for a long time without taking a single shot, nestled up against the snow-covered parapet and closely pressed against each other. Lying in the frost for several hours on end without moving was not much fun, and we were not used to it. The frost went right through us. We so wanted to get up and warm our frozen feet and hands with some vigorous movement, but we knew this was impossible. We were in a lousy mood. It began to get dark. Suddenly, I noticed some moving targets in my firing sector, about 60 meters from our observation point. "Ivan, take a look. I can see some Nazis on the right," I cried out joyfully.
What wasn't it? You had a 224 mark. So another question, what did it feel like watching enemies through your scope? If there's any feeling attached to it, it was nerves, maybe, on a real low level. Not a lot of emotion in it at all. Because you're going through a process. So as soon as you think you see a target, as soon as you identify someone who's suspicious, rig that, or you identify someone in a battle who's obviously got a weapon, who's obviously involved in the battle. There's no emotion involved in it. You're going like an infantry soldier who's in the battle elsewhere. You're going through a process. You're applying training. You are identifying targets. When I say identifying targets, that means you're confirming that target is a legitimate target and you're not just eating at anyone. So as soon as you identify a target and you're going on to the next stage of the process, which is a decision what to do with that target. Because the decision is not always kill them. So what did it feel like watching enemies through a scope? It felt good that when you know you identified a target, so it's legitimate. For identifying a Taliban fighter, that feels good. So aside from maybe a real low level of nerves, just nervousness. And that nerves is to do with not wanting to miss, being inside the shoot. But apart from that, satisfaction that you've identified a target. It's a good thing. It's what we're there for, right? Find the enemy and then do what we will with them.
Completely forgetting that I was only about 80 meters from the enemy front line and could become a target myself. I'll take the last one, then the first one. Dobrik had spotted the Nazis too. Don't let them get away, Yevgeny. Making the usual adjustments to allow for crosswind and the movement of the target, I set my sights on the head of the last of the 3 Nazis, and, holding my breath, smoothly pressed the trigger.
Wasn't it 2 minutes 47 mark there? So, the longest I waited in a sniper position in combat, the longest I can remember waiting was as in a sniper position was just over an hour. That was in the siege of Masakala. And there was a specific reason for that. I was swapping over with another sniper that was toolless, and the position we were in could only occupy one person. And so we were rotating on the hour, if I remember. I think we only did that for a day. And when I say this, I mean that is specifically in a sniper position, very hidden, very still, waiting for a specific target at a specific point on the perimeter of Musicala, because he knew that we consistently getting engaged from a spot just outside the perimeter, engaged by the enemy, just outside the perimeter, which was, when I was specific, I mean, it was within a 3 meters by 2 meters like area. It was a corner of an alleyway where a fight would occasionally come round, come out of the alleyway to pop round and be shooting at our guys in a guard position in the Sanger. And so myself and Jared, we created a little hidden sniper position, which was away from the Sanger, but we could see that alleyway corner. And we didn't know when this fighter would come out. We didn't know if he'd be away for 3 days, being a plane going on all the time around. So we basically decided to put this position in, and we would wait in that position for this guy to pop round. So an hour, I think we were doing hour, I would do an hour, and then we swap over, he'd do an hour. So I think we did that for just over a day, maybe. It may have only been a day. That, and like an hour may seem short. Now, in this scenario, we're behind the scope for an hour there. We're not sitting there, sitting back, resting. You're literally, all you're doing is looking at one spot through the scope for an hour with your finger on the trigger. That's all you're doing. And it is extremely fatiguing. You try sitting on your couch, right, in a nice comfy position, and staring at a spot on the wall for an hour. Very bored. And you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to do it at all. The mind wanders. And the same happens with snipers. But less so in these scenarios, and I mean, we weren't sitting on the couch. We were laid in a position that wasn't the comfiest. So, yeah, about an hour. There's been other times where I've gone out for much longer with a smaller team, and we've been in an ambush position for a lot longer. But as a sniper, looking through the scope, about an hour.
The sound of a sniper's bullet is not loud, but its sting is lethal. I barely caught the sound of my shot. My own heart was thumping much more loudly, it seemed to me. I saw the last of the Germans sink down. The other two continued on their way without noticing what had happened. Cheered by my success, I decided to shoot the second Nazi. The second conqueror also fell, as if he had tripped. However, he must have had time to yell something, because the first soldier, who had taken 2 of 3 further steps forward, stopped, looked around, and went back up to his fallen companion. He stood over him, gesticulating with his hands and saying something to the soldier lying immobile. He was possibly ticking him off for his clumsiness, or more likely suggesting that he get back on his feet, still failing to guess what had actually happened and certainly not expecting what would happen a second later. I had more than enough time to reload the rifle and take another shot. It made a sharp crack, as if a woodpecker had struck a dry fir tree with its sturdy beak. And felled by my bullet, the third Nazi collapsed dead on top of the second.
Alternate 4 minutes 34. So, the question here is, what did it feel like when you fired your sniper rifle in war? I think, I mean, I'm guessing here. I'm not guessing. Satisfaction, I'd say. I don't know. I'd say satisfaction is the right way to say it. And that is satisfaction not about being able to, well, yeah, it is about being able to actually shoot an enemy as a sniper. But I think it's the same kind of satisfaction that any soldier gets the first time you're able to fire their weapon in combat. Just fire their weapon in anger, so to speak. And especially at the time that I deployed versus Afghanistan, most people in the British forces at that time, we're talking 95%, more higher than that. More than 95% of British forces at that time had never fired a shot in anger, because there hadn't been a lot of kinetic situations going on. In the 10, 15 years lead up to that, there'd been some different operations. There'd even been the Iraq War. The Iraq War wasn't even that kinetic, and not a huge amount of soldiers fired their weapons there. Not everyone was involved in it anyway. As in, not all the British military were involved in it anyway. So off the back of that, being part of joining the British military and then realizing actually things are really quiet, and it was very rare to know directly anyone who would fire their weapons in anger. I didn't know of anyone. I don't think I didn't know of anyone. And then all of a sudden, I'm in a position to do it. So it was satisfaction. Satisfaction in that, okay, I'm able to do my job now. Cool. This feels good. Everything I've trained for, everything I've got me to this position now has enabled me to be able to do this. So yeah, satisfaction. Next question is, what is the parachute regiment protocol for responding to sniper fire? It's no different to any other British infantry unit or British soldier. And generally, the initial response is you don't realize you're responding to sniper fire. So at the start, so that first shot comes towards you over your head, or someone gets shot next to you. You just responding to fire, and you go through a drill essentially most of the time, depending on what position you're in, and that is you return accurate fire in the direction that you think the sniper fire has come from, or the shooting has come from. Then you take cover, and then once you've taken cover and you've got a bit of an understanding of what's going on, we take a split second here, and you return more fire. So you try and stop the fire coming your way by returning it by the other way, trying to get them to get their heads down and hide, and them to take cover, to buy you a bit of time to make a plan. I think once you know it's sniper fire, there's a bunch of different things you can take. The safest way to eliminate sniper fire is to attack it indirectly. If you can find out where that sniper's shooting from, then you don't want to be sending infantry to go and try and kill that sniper. You don't even want to be using your own sniper, really, because that can take time. The first thing you want to be doing, if you've got indirect fire capability, like mortars, for example, and use that. It's the safest way. Snipers are very good at hiding. Snipers are very good at being very, I've already said it, precision shots, obviously, So the less you can, the less you expose yourselves when you try to counter a sniper, the better. And the best way to not expose yourselves is with indirect fire. Not always possible, though. Okay, so the next question is, what should this German have done instead? And then the German went over to his friend to pick him up. The German is acting just complete inexperience there, complete inexperience. If I was in a wartime situation and I saw someone next to me drop, I was surprised he didn't hear the shot, to be honest. When I saw someone next to me drop, the first thing I would be doing is dropping immediately. I'd be dropping out my belt buckle and then asking if he's okay. And if he tripped over, then I wouldn't be feeling like a fool. I would think he's a fool. And then we get up and go on. So the first thing the German should have done is try to find cover, find a little bit of the land, a bit of cover, and maybe prevent the sniper from shooting him. If the ground is that open and barren and the sniper selected the killing ground really well, then the Germans are going to die anyway. There's probably nothing he could have done. But not what he deserves, I suppose.
A sniper has many enemies, especially in the summer. Apart from the main one, the enemy, there are others from whom you can never know what to expect. They can be bees, wasps, flies, ants, and even field mice. I remember once on a fine summer's day, Ivan Dobrik and I were lying in ambush. We had to lie out in no man's land, in thick grass in a flat, open area, almost right under the enemy's noses. We conducted observations of the German front line and the approaches to it, having correctly calculated that, in thick grass in a flat field without a single landmark, it would be difficult for the Nazis to spot us. We would have lain there calmly till darkness fell, but for pure chance. My partner, lying motionless in the baking sun, suddenly became an object of interest to a tiny field mouse. How this curious daredevil got past his tightly fastened belt into Ivan's tunic, I still cannot understand. While the mouse was crawling around somewhere on his back, Ivan managed to put up with it, being afraid to move. But when it ventured lower down, onto his stomach and began to nip him, Dobrik's patience snapped. He suddenly bellowed across the whole of no man's land and began laughing hysterically. I was seriously afraid. He had discarded his rifle and was rolling around on the grass and yelling with a heart-rending voice. "What's up, Ivan? Are you out of your mind? There are Germans right next to us. They'll spray us any minute now," I said in bewilderment. The whole situation and the expression on Ivan's face as he continued to roll around in the grass put me in a foolishly merry mood. I too began to laugh. Of course, the Nazis were not slow to open fire with mortars. "Let's run for it." Ivan could barely utter the words through tears of laughter, and grabbing his rifle he darted towards our trenches, pressing one hand to a wound he'd only just suffered as he went. "You've put on quite a show," said the observer, escorting Ivan and me under cover. "Have you turned into a couple of half-wits, or what?" The constant bombing raids, the continuous artillery fire, the pursuit of enemy snipers, the possibility that any second you could become a target yourself for an equally experienced German marksman, or perish from a stray bullet or an enemy shell or mortar fragment, all made for constant tension. At night, when we were off duty, I used to go and see my friend and fellow townsman, Vlad Dudin, our company sergeant major. Vlad and I had no trouble finding things to talk about. By the light of a homemade oil lamp fueled by low-grade petrol or fat, we would recall the distant and precious days of peacetime. And of course, we recalled our hometown of Tambov, our traumatically short youth, our home, kith and kin. One time we became so involved in our conversation that dawn had already broken beyond the dugout's closed door. We were reminded of it by our regimental wit and master of...
Looking at the 7:30 point there. There's the question, yeah, okay, so what's the hardest thing I found about being a sniper in combat here? I mean, field mouse, getting the kit. Christmas. I mean, the first thing that springs to mind on that question is one that you sort of may not have thought, but it was, we got into a situation in Afghanistan where the appetite for on stomach for casualties, for British casualties, was getting worse and worse and worse. That meant that public consent and opinion of the British involvement in the campaign in Afghanistan was dwindling, and negative response. The more casualties there were, just the worse it was making things for the British government at the time. And so what that meant to troops on the ground is it became our ability to operate in a way that was maybe a little bit more risk averse was being restricted. And the amount of kit and equipment that we were being forced to wear, protective kit and equipment, was increasing. It meant it was harder, physically harder to operate as an effective soldier or a sniper if you're being forced to wear huge amount of armor and other such things. But also there was rules brought in, such as minimum numbers of troops that had go on the ground, go out on the patrol, for example. So there was a point where you weren't allowed to go out of the camp or whatever little base you were in, be that big or small, with any less than 12 men. It didn't work well for a sniper. And so I think that was the toughest time, was not being allowed to deploy in the most effective way as a sniper team. Most of the time we operated in pairs or sniper teams, and the teams are smaller than 12. A pair is smaller than 12, obviously. There's only 2 people, and we couldn't operate like that. We just weren't allowed. I managed to do it once, but it took it took approval from right up to Whitehall for the little mission I wanted to do to get that mission, and it was exceptional circumstances that resulted in them proving it. That was 5 people, which is much better than 12. Yeah, that was the toughest thing, restriction on our ability to operate because of political situations, basically. Um, okay, so I've been asked what does mortar fire feel like? You've been under mortar fire too. What do it feel like? I think Coke, who's asked this question, knows the answer to this question already. Mortar fire is fine. Any fire is fine. I'm fine with it if you can do something about it. Probably the only time I've been scared or felt fear in my time when I was serving was a situation where we were repeatedly getting mortared. I say repeatedly on a daily basis. And there was, it got to a point where there was nothing we could do about it. Nothing we could do about it. And we would have to sit there and hope it didn't hit us, basically. That situation is well documented in a bunch of different, in a couple of different documentaries, BBC and Channel 4. And that's part of the siege of Masakala. But that's what that felt like. That's the only time I've been mortared. That's the only time I felt fear being mortared. But all the other times, I'm trying to think how many other times there were. The other times, no fear whatsoever, really, because we were able to do something about it, or try and do something about it. Counter the morphine, for example.
Sarcasm. Vlad Kozyrev. Bursting into the dugout, Kozyrev shouted at us from the doorway, his eyes sticking out of his head. "What are you sitting there for, gabbling nonsense when the Nazis have played such a filthy trick on us?" "What sort of trick?" asked Dudin in irritation, expecting, as usual from Kozyrev, another prank or practical joke. "The Germans have put up a plywood sign with nasty slogans against us. What are you going to do?" We got to the front line, and indeed on top of a German dugout stood a plywood sign on narrow poles thrust into the snow. Inscribed on it, with charcoal in big letters, was, "Greetings, citizen, come over to our side," in ungrammatical Russian.
A question here: what did I do when there was downtime during the war? Okay. I don't refer to the only war I was part of, and that was the Iraq War, 2003, where we invaded Iraq to overthrow Saddam. What do we do in our downtime? We did what probably anyone else does. We fed ourselves as much as we could. We rested as much as we could. And we slept. And we fixed, repaired, replaced our kit and equipment as much as we could if it needed it. And weapons, obviously. That's what we did. You just rest. First thing you do is you get all your weapon and your kit ready to go again. You never know where you're going to go again. Even if they say, yeah, you got downtime now for 12 hours, maybe you've been pulled off the front line for 12 hours or 2 days. That never lasts that long. And actually, we had that situation in Iraq in 2003, towards the last day of the war. We got pulled off the ground. I think we went to go into divisional reserve. 4 days, maybe. And it actually resulted in being 24 hours, 24 or 36 hours. So you get your kit and equipment ready to go again, and you rest as much as you can, and you eat as much as you can, and you hydrate as much as you can.
I settled comfortably into my deep-dug firing position. My observation point was well camouflaged on the side facing the enemy, and nothing was likely to be detected from above. Our troops had long been instructed in the art of camouflage, especially we snipers. It is no secret that the casual, slack and careless do not survive on the front. Indecisively, cautiously, As if concerned that his appearance would set machine guns rattling and cause people to die, the sun glanced out. It was now quite light. I had been studying the enemy defences for a long time, the German dugouts. Now and again someone would pass by near them, cautiously stooped over. They didn't need to worry. It wasn't them that interested me today. I took a look to the rear. According to what our scouts had told me, their headquarters ought to be somewhere there. Earlier on, any Nazi headquarters was easy to distinguish by the telephone lines. Now the Germans had become more careful. They'd begun to run the wires along the ground and cover them with snow.
Pause at 9:27. Did the Taliban or UK troops ever taunt or play jokes on each other? No. Not as far as I'm aware. We certainly didn't. No.
The main thing was the sentry walking back and forth by their dugout. Looks like that's the headquarters, I thought to myself, and finally switched all my attention to it. I estimated that it was roughly 700 meters away, but estimating distance by eye is one thing. It needed to be checked. I set my sights at 700 meters and loaded the rifle with a tracer cartridge. I chose a moment when the machine guns were chattering on the edge of the front line, and covered by their noise, took a single shot. The bullet left a clear trace in the door. Everything was precisely worked out. Now it only remained to make a slight adjustment to the sight's drum, and await the kill. I caught sight of 3 Nazis leaving the white heap of the dugout. One of them was naked to the waist, while the other 2 were minus overcoats, just in uniforms. Raising up his arms, the half-naked one began to walk around. Bastard, he's come out to do his exercises, I guessed. The other 2 began to wash their faces with snow. Waiting for the moment when the semi-naked man finally stopped and began to do some squats, I took my first shot. The Nazi squatted and collapsed onto the snow and lay down, as if he was going to sunbathe, glad to see the bright sun. One of the other men turned, looked at the lying man, and apparently said something to the other. He turned round. They both stood there and looked at the man spread out on the snow, then went up and began to lift him up. Then, realizing what was up, they started looking round, perplexed, not realizing where the bullet had come from. They didn't even look at our trenches, apparently thinking the distance was too far. I didn't allow them to ponder for too long, and skewered both of them. And hardly had I got ready to fire again when I saw a motorbike and sidecar approaching the headquarters dugout. The motorcyclist rode up and stopped dead by the door itself. A tall German jumped from the pillion in no time at all and began to assist a fat Nazi to get out of the sidecar. While he was obligingly fiddling round with this person of seemingly important rank, I focused on the rider, who had leaned forward to rest on the handlebars. I fired. The tall man had turned to the motorcyclist, wishing, I thought, to command him to leave, but seeing that he was apparently asleep over the handlebars, gave him a nudge. In vain, however. After my shot, the tall man also fell backwards behind the motorcyclist, waving his arms. Enthusiasm is all very well, but the voice of reason was still telling me, enough for today, you can't stay in one place for so long, they'll get you. I settled down into my deep little foxhole. There wasn't much room in there and I was terribly thirsty. I felt the urge for a little sleep. The extra nervous tension had seemingly had an effect. So what? I can relax a little bit.
What was it? 12 minutes, 19 seconds there. Okay, question here from Coke is how hard is it to judge distance by sight? It is. So if you're on your own, you've got no technical, it's very difficult. Not impossible. It's one of the things that snipers get trained in and trained and tested in. You have to be able to judge distance by sight only to a specific level of accuracy in order to pass the sniper course. Our sniper course I did anyway. I remember not all sniper courses are the same. So, yeah. Very difficult. It's more difficult if the distance is further, i.e. if the target's further away. So, if you're dealing with a target here, in this case, it's 700 meters compared to 100 meters, it's a lot easier to judge the distance to something closer and further away. And also, it depends on the land, the environment in which the target is. the less features there are around um, for you to be able to do size comparisons, the harder it is to judge your distance to the target. The best conditions are where there are multiple creatures around, man-made, where you know the height of those creatures and can use that knowledge to estimate how far away the target is. Um, yeah, it's difficult. Judging distance by sight is difficult, and it's something you've constantly got to train, constantly got to practice. It is one of the things that that is subject to skill fade very, very quickly.
But I had scarcely closed my eyes before a shell whistled past and exploded somewhere nearby. Leaping up immediately, I looked out of the trench and saw 300 meters away huge clumps of earth settling back from on high. Several minutes later, I once again heard the whistle of a flying shell. It grew in volume. The explosion forced me to stoop down lower in my foxhole. This shell fell about 100 meters away from me and closer to the tram lines. Clearly, the gunners were aiming for me. But I never got to hear the next explosion. The next exploding shell tossed up fresh tons of earth. A huge clump the size of a cauldron lid covered me in my firing niche, landing heavily on my back. It's all over, the thought raced through my mind. I'll never dig my way out. I've got no more strength left, and something's weighing down heavily on me, in my ears, in my mouth, up my nose. Again, some blunt object landed on the ground, and something heavy struck me on the head and rolled onto my shoulders. Then there was total silence. Darkness descended, and I could think no more. I came to an our company command post in a vast concrete pipe laid across the tram line and right under it. I was sitting on a stool with my back leaning against the pipe. Some people were walking around me. I sort of recognized them and didn't recognize them. Everything was in a fog. Maybe I've gone deaf, I thought. As they told me later, I slept at the command post for 18 hours uninterrupted. Slept as I sat there. Dear Mum, I'm not hiding anything. Honestly, I'm alive and well, safe and unharmed. First, I must tell you that Vlad Dudin and I are now on rest and recreation in the rear. It's a kind of gratuity for us. For example, I recently wiped out 11 Nazis in a day, and now I've been rewarded. Yesterday, a scout I know dropped by in passing and said that 3 days ago our troops had captured an important Nazi. At interrogation, this man told us, "One of your snipers killed 11 gallant soldiers of our Reich in 2 hours. One was a general." So now my tally includes a general as well. So you see, I am truthfully reporting my activities at the front. Now I'm waiting for your report on life and work. Yevgeny.
Falls in at the 15:52 mark. Yeah, he was pretty honest there in that letter back to his family. The question I've got you from Coke is, was I honest with friends and family about my wartime experiences when I was there, in the different places I was? No is probably the answer, is the answer. And we were able to write letters occasionally. Well, we were able to write letters whenever we wanted. It's how quick those letters would get out is another thing. In the Iraq War, they would get out infrequently. We didn't do a lot of letter writing anyway. During the war period, or during the war phase anyway, Afghanistan was different. We had the means we could write, and the letters would get out fairly regularly, weekly, fortnightly basis. Probably also had satellite phones. We had in the Iraq War on satellite phones where you get allocated a number of minutes a week or a fortnight to be able to call home. No, I wasn't honest. No, and I say I wasn't honest. I wasn't dishonest. I just wasn't communicating details. I didn't want to worry my parents. So, I wouldn't make the specifics. I'd be very general about things. If they ask specific questions, how are you? Well, I wouldn't ask specific questions. How's it going out there? Are they okay? Are you safe? And my response would be, yeah. I didn't want to worry them, so I wasn't honest. different scenario though to World War II, the long war, years of fighting. The communication back home becomes very distant, and I think and there's different needs on both sides. And on both sides, there's different needs for the soldiers right now, and different needs for the families receiving the letters. Part two of this question was, what did my kids think of my military service? Look, all I got asked, I think, they don't look at it negatively. I think, proud of me, I would hope. I don't know. I don't really answer that question, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I think they're proud of it. Or they're proud of me, I think. Well, my background. Maybe that may change.
December was a harsh month. The winter of 1941 to 1942 has remained in everyone's memory. It came early and it was ferocious. The winter months became a difficult test for both of us, the defenders of Leningrad and for its residents. Unsettled by their heavy losses, the German command was compelled to call in troops urgently from other fronts and direct their super sharpshooters against Leningrad. So, aces like this, expert masters of their craft, killers with seniority and huge experience, appeared in our area too. We quickly felt the presence of these Nazi snipers. They would fire through the slit of a pillbox and skillfully take out our observers. I resolved to test myself against one of the Nazi ace snipers who had appeared in our sector. By tracking the path of the Nazis' shots back to their point of origin, I came to the conclusion that he was sitting somewhere close to the tram lines, in the broad expanse in front of our 3rd platoon, to the right of it and closer to the Gulf of Finland, in no man's land. And so, clad in a snow-white camouflage smock over my regular clothes, I crawled in that direction, one dark and frosty night. By first light, I was already lying in no man's land, well camouflaged in the deep snow. I was not concerned about concealment, but would I succeed in spotting the enemy? He would also be camouflaged against the same snow, one imagined, just as well as I was. And so, I waited. However, it all turned out differently. Suddenly, I noticed against the pure, eye-testingly white snow, a suspicious little spot of something coloured differently from snow had appeared. And thus, while pondering and trying to explain the reason for this spot, I lost sight of the most important thing, the thing I had been freezing so long for. But it all turned out to be very simple. Beside this little spot on the surface, a big one suddenly appeared, in white camouflage. In a trice, it crept up a couple of meters to the left and disappeared as if swallowed by the earth. From the unexpected nature of it all and being chilled to the bone, I didn't even manage a shot. They literally carried me in their arms to the dugout, as my feet had refused to move. They were frozen and, it appeared, frostbitten. Contact with hard surface caused intolerable pain. But, once again, my friends came to the rescue. They took my footwear off in the dugout and began to rub my feet with snow and woolen gloves until I felt some pinpricks. The battalion medical assistant was consulted. "Oh dear, no brains," he said reproachfully. "You should have smeared your feet with fat before you went out, wrapped them in newspaper, and only then wound on your foot wrappings." "Well," I responded, "I'll do everything scientifically tomorrow. But today, just rub them. Make an effort, be a friend."
Those conditions were horrendous. Born in 1909 here. So, yeah, the condition there. My God. In a different world back then, like, I probably would happen again like that if we had a war like this of this type in similar parts of the world. Although I don't think we will see a war of this type again in similar parts of the world for a long, long time. Don't know what I'm talking to. What I'm saying is, listen to my episode with soon to be released with a guy called oh shit. or brain fart, Steve Holland, who is spending a lot of time in Ukraine and in Gaza, and his experiences of robotic warfare. Yeah, frightening. Anyway, we're on to the last questions here from Coke. So, what was it like hunting Taliban snipers? I know you're advised on hunting one and even prepared an ambush. I came across a Taliban sniper, I think, only once. It's the only time it sticks in mind, because he killed some friends. It was difficult because of the scenario, the situation I mentioned earlier on in this video, in that at the time of this guy appearing, the restriction on how he could move and how he could operate as infantry and as snipers was severely diminished. So it was very difficult hunting this sniper. Yeah, because we were allowed to do what we wanted to do. And that, there's a bunch of different ways we would have dealt with him that are, textbook ways to go and deal with snipers, especially as a sniper. We weren't able to do it. It was difficult. Our hands are tied, so to speak. Yeah. How did Taliban snipers compare to British ones? That particular sniper, I was surprised at the level, the high level of skills he had. I know that other people were as well. There was people who were having to deal with that sniper for a week or two in advance of me getting there. And I know they said the same thing, and they were in communication with me before I got there. One of the reasons I went to that area is because they were having trouble killing this guy. And I don't think there's no comparison, simply because our level of professionalism, the training, and the kit and equipment is far above and beyond what Taliban snipers have. Even I suspect that guy was an older guy who was likely around, towards the tail end, as in a fighter during the tail end of the Russian occupation, I suggest. So this guy's probably in his 60s, I think. I can't imagine you get a young lad with a young Taliban fighter with those skills. And when I say skills, I mean he was very good at moving into position, taking a shot, extracting a position without being spotted. Very good, very good. Is only the only thing that I would criticize him for would be he was prone to leaving killing equipment around if he had to leave in a rush. There were a couple of times where we found things that where he knew, somebody told us we knew there where he'd taken the shot from. We found afterwards, after an incident, where we found where he'd taken the shot from, which is pretty sloppy skills. He's amateur at the end of the day. He's not a professional soldier like us. So he was surprisingly good, but I wouldn't say any comparison to British soldiers or British snipers, no. I think that's it. How long left? Let's look. 3 minutes. Let's watch it.
In the morning, I was awakened by the company sentry. It's time. Up you get. What, already? What a pleasant dream you've interrupted. I was dreaming of my mother. We were buying rye flat cakes, hot and fragrant. Did you get to try one? Asked the sentry. He didn't give me a chance, I answered, closing my eyes again. Enough Betty Bye, Nikolaev. You'll miss your Nazi. That I was facing an experienced foe, there could be no doubt, just as it could not be doubted that he was already in situ. He's outwitted me, the bastard. Got there earlier, I thought, when first light had already dawned. Tears began to form in my eyes from the continuous observation of a single point through telescopic sights. It was the wind blowing straight into my face and the frost. I kept brushing away the tears while trying not to make any obvious movements. The fingers of my right hand, which were constantly ready for action, had frozen. and I began to worry as to whether I would be able to hit the target when necessary. I realized that in duels like this there were no wounded. A sniper only ever makes a single mistake. I had not taken a shot in over a week, and he had noticed that and was being careful. I didn't have time to complete my thought when suddenly something seemed to prod me in the very heart, and with good reason. The head of the Nazi had appeared from out of a trench above the snowy covering. All at once I felt hot. Now, just like yesterday, he would drag his large body out of the trench onto the surface, swiftly cover the 3 meters distance, and be off. No, you must be joking, you rat. It won't work this time. And I firmly grasped the rifle in my hands. The Nazi's face, firmly held in the sights of my rifle, was distinctly visible through the eyepiece. He did not even glance in my direction. I had to bring him down and show everyone that he was lying fallen on our land, and I was almost certain that any second now he would leap out. He was bound to repeat his maneuver from yesterday, only now I knew about it and was expecting it. Unsettled by the silence around and hurried along by the intensifying frost and gathering darkness, with one short jump, the Nazi landed up on the surface of the ground. Stooping low, he managed to take his first and last step. The shot, long awaited on our sector, resounded. Like the crack of a whip echoing in the frosty air, it brought the Nazi down onto the snow. His rifle, now a danger no longer to our troops, slipped out of his hands and fell at the feet of its dead owner. At the end of 1942, I was transferred to counterintelligence and my sniper's score was cut off at the total of 324. Having liberated Leningrad from the enemy siege, our division, along with other units of the Leningrad front, pressed forward, drove the Nazis back and reached their actual den. Travelling the entire route with me was my sniper's rifle, the butt of which still bears the 3 large, 2 medium-sized and 4 small stars traced on it during the war years.
Now that was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I've not done one of these ones before where it's talking about the Russians in the Second World War. So thank you to Coke for making the reaction video request. And if you have a video you'd like me to request or to react to, then just become a subscriber of the podcast. Links in the blog. And the rest from there. Thanks for supporting the podcast and enjoying this video. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the video. And if you've got your own experiences or any of that, drop a comment.